On the surface, South Korea looks unstoppable. Booming tech giants, global pop culture dominance, and glittering skyscrapers. But behind the success lies a silent crisis. Skyrocketing debt, collapsing birth rates, and a mental health epidemic are tearing the country apart from within. What if one of the world's most admired nations is quietly falling into collapse, and no one is talking about it? Stay until the end, because what you're about to discover will change the way you see South Korea forever. The illusion of economic success. South Korea is often praised as an economic miracle, a country that transformed itself from poverty to prosperity in just a few decades. With tech titans like Samsung, LG, and Hyundai leading global markets, it's easy to believe the country is thriving. But what the headlines don't show is that this rapid growth came with a hidden cost, an economy dangerously dependent on a few corporate giants and millions of citizens left behind. Beneath the surface, South Korea's household debt is among the highest in the world, exceeding 100% of the country's GDP. Young people are borrowing heavily just to survive, whether it's for education, housing, or simply to keep up with a high-cost lifestyle. While the rich get richer, the middle and lower classes are drowning, not in luxury but in loans they can't repay. The housing crisis is suffocating. In cities like Seoul, real estate prices have soared so high that owning a home is almost impossible for the average worker. Many young adults are forced to either live with their parents well into their 30s or rent tiny windowless rooms known as gosiwon. What was once a symbol of ambition, owning property, has become a distant dream for an entire generation. Even the job market is starting to crack. Despite having one of the highest rates of university graduates in the world, South Korea faces high youth unemployment and job insecurity. Stable, well-paying jobs are scarce, and many young Koreans settle for short-term contracts or underpaid roles with little opportunity for growth. The image of a booming economy is just that, an image. And behind it, the system is quietly falling apart. Mental health crisis and social isolation. South Korea has one of the highest suicide rates among developed nations. And that's not a coincidence. Beneath the polished exterior of success lies a deep and growing mental health crisis. For decades, intense academic pressure, a rigid social hierarchy, and a brutal work culture have taken a toll on the population's emotional well-being. In many cases, success in South Korea comes at the cost of sanity. Young people grow up in an environment where failure is not an option. From childhood, students face relentless competition to enter top universities, followed by the pressure to land prestigious jobs. Those who fall behind are often labeled as failures, even by their own families. The result? A generation plagued by anxiety, depression, and burnout before they even begin their adult lives. But it's not just the youth who are suffering. Elderly South Koreans are also facing an epidemic of loneliness and despair. Many live in poverty, forgotten by their families, with no one to turn to. In fact, suicide among the elderly is shockingly high, driven by isolation, financial instability, and a lack of social support. This tragic pattern reflects a society that's moving fast, but forgetting its people. New cultural trends like honjok, living alone by choice, and hobby rooms are evidence of a growing retreat from social life. People are choosing to isolate themselves, not out of preference, but out of exhaustion and disillusionment. Government campaigns and mental health apps can only go so far. Without real structural change, South Korea's hidden mental health crisis will continue to deepen, silently and dangerously. The demographic collapse. South Korea is facing a demographic disaster that could rewrite its future. With a fertility rate of just 0.72 children per woman, the lowest in the world, the country is on a path toward population decline so severe that entire cities may become ghost towns within a few decades. While other nations struggle with aging populations, South Korea is collapsing faster than anyone expected. Why are people choosing not to have children? The reasons are many and deeply rooted. The cost of living is unbearable, especially in cities like Seoul. Childcare is expensive, work-life balance is non-existent, and the pressure to raise a child in a hyper-competitive society is overwhelming. For many young couples, the idea of having kids feels like a punishment, not a blessing. Marriage. Rates are also plummeting. More and more young Koreans are rejecting traditional family structures altogether. A growing number belong to the so-called Sampo generation, those who have given up on dating, marriage, and having children. Instead, they choose solitude and independence over a life they see as unaffordable and unsustainable. This demographic collapse isn't just a social issue, it's an economic time bomb. Fewer workers mean slower growth, collapsing pension systems, and rising healthcare costs. With military service still mandatory, even national security is at risk as the pool of eligible soldiers shrinks. South Korea isn't just losing people, it's losing its future. A generation that's giving up in today's South Korea, an alarming trend is unfolding. An entire generation is giving up on the future, saddled with debt, stuck in unstable jobs and priced out of the housing market. Many young Koreans feel that no matter how hard they work, success is simply out of reach. For them, the traditional path, study hard, get a good job, buy a home, start a family, has collapsed. This mindset has created what's known as the Sampo generation, meaning three give-up generation, those who've given up on relationships, marriage, and children. But for many, it doesn't stop there. Some are now part of the Enpo generation, who've abandoned even more: home ownership, personal dreams, and any sense of long-term hope. This isn't laziness, it's survival. Even those who do manage to succeed often face crushing burnout. Korea's corporate culture is infamous for long hours, rigid hierarchies, and intense pressure to conform. Promotions are slow, competition is brutal, and individuality is discouraged. For many young workers, climbing the ladder isn't worth the psychological cost. This generational despair is reshaping South Korean society. Young people are retreating from ambition, avoiding risk, and opting out of traditional life goals. They're not chasing the future, they're protecting themselves from it. And unless something changes, the country risks creating a lost generation, one that no longer believes in tomorrow. A warning to the world: what's happening in South Korea isn't just a national issue, it's a global warning. As countries chase rapid economic growth, digital dominance, and urban expansion, they may unknowingly be following the same path. A society that prioritizes productivity over people, competition over community, and status over stability is bound to collapse from the inside. South Korea has become a mirror of modern life taken to the extreme: overworked, disconnected, aging, and emotionally drained. And it's not alone. Nations like Japan, China, and even parts of the West are beginning to see similar cracks forming. Rising loneliness, collapsing birth rates, mental health crises. What was once called progress may soon be revealed as unsustainable. If one of the world's most advanced and disciplined societies is now fighting to stay afloat, what does that mean for the rest of us? South Korea is living in the future, and that future is deeply fragile. We can no longer afford to ignore the social consequences of unchecked economic ambition. This collapse is silent, invisible to tourists, and overlooked by media headlines. But it's happening, and it's accelerating. South Korea's story should not just concern us, it should wake us up. South Korea's fall isn't loud, it's quiet, it's polite, it's hidden beneath smiles, skyscrapers, and statistics. But make no mistake, the collapse is real. And if we don't pay attention, it could be our future too. If this message opened your eyes, share it. And subscribe to this channel for more truths the mainstream won't tell you, because the world is changing, and you deserve to see what's coming.